the ultimate feeling of adequacy that should come from that moment doesn't, right? Because the adequacy is a self thing.
The best guests on a podcast are those who have achieved immense amounts of success, and they're not fussed about people's views on what they say or do. Welcome to the Exiteers podcast. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Roei, absolutely delighted to have you on the Exiteers podcast today, mate.
It took far too long for us to get it together, but I'm so glad to be here.
It has taken far too long, but personally I'm blaming you because you're Mr. International Travel at the minute.
I think it's fair to put the blame on me for that one, for sure. Yeah, although I'm now back in the UK for a little while, and I'm so happy for that. I mean, I know you've travelled a lot with business as well, and it gets a bit much.
It does. Although having watched your kind of movements on Instagram and stuff, I think you're doing more travel than you have been doing more travel than most. So yeah, delighted we've got you in here today. I was kind of reflecting on route over. The last podcast I did with you was when I was on yours back in 2023. The Big Risk Energy, and that building that we were in Shoreditch, it was
Dream
Shoreditch.
Factory, yeah.
That building and that setup was incredible. In way of, when you go into a building sometimes and you can kind of almost feel the energy. Yeah,
it's awesome what those guys did. Oh, it was a shame that I stopped doing that podcast. I really enjoyed doing it, and I think like you, it's about bringing people together in person. And when the travel schedule got a bit crazy, wasn't able to do it. But yeah, it was a really cool space.
Yeah, really.
Cool. How long have you been running this?
So Exiteers podcast, we are into second year.
Nice.
And the kind of motivation for me was I wanted to learn how to listen a little better. And that was what prompted me to want to do the podcast. So I think, the kind of journeys and the stories of founders who have built and sold businesses. I'm keen to kind of, I guess, give those founders a stage to share the journey from a technical business perspective, but the bit that always interests me is the emotional impact of some of these bits. And with that in mind, I'm particularly keen to kind of dig into your background. So you have built and sold. I think you sold at 26.
Yeah, exactly.
And will you talk us through a little bit through that journey?
Yeah, of course. Well, I guess the sort of entrepreneurial journey started very, very young, because at 14 years old, I was nearly kicked out of school. I was severely ADHD. I was constantly, and rightfully so, in trouble the whole time because I was a little shit.
Sounds familiar.
Right, yeah. But so then you know what it's like, right? You're in school and you're like, okay, I do not fit inside the system.
Yeah.
Whatever that system is. If I can't fit in this system, my likelihood of being a doctor, lawyer, these paths, very, very low.
Yeah.
Right. And you feel that from early because you're told that you don't fit in, or you feel like you don't fit in that way. So the idea of doing something for myself, and my dad had never had a job. He'd always been an entrepreneur, sometimes good, most of the time bad.
Yeah.
And the ups and downs.
The roller coaster.
As we know all too well on that side. And I guess from that exposure and also feeling outside the box at school, you're going to go down that route early. So even at like 15, 16, I was running like under 16s nights, like trying to start running club nights, doing all the things that you do, which are in and around you at the time. And then I actually got medicated for ADHD, which was what stopped me getting kicked out of school. And I got so over-medicated. I was given 120 milligrams a day of Ritalin.
Wow.
Most people now who take it are like 20 a day.
Jesus.
And I was like 9.5 stone on 120 milligrams a day. Basically, I was wired on speed. Like
that I can relate. That's my 20s talking then,
right.
Mate. So yeah, I'm hearing you.
Yeah, so that was me as a teenager. And guess what? It did make me focus a bit more at school, right? As you'd imagine, and sort of numbs you. And went through that, managed to get into university, was running all sorts of stuff there. And then, just before dropping out, I started building something called RealSport, which was essentially a content creation toolkit, helping people create podcasts, videos, other types of content, giving them tools to distribute content through social, because the tools for that were very, very nascent at the time. And we got really, really lucky with that. Ended up working with some big sports rights holders. We're in with Premier League, NBA, NFL.
Wow.
Really, really fun journey. Although I love and feel very, very purposeful in what we do with Connected, the perks of working in the sports world were definitely more fun than the future of work on that side. So it was a great, great ride. And then, we were acquired by a big gaming company called Gfinity in 2018.
Okay. And that kind of journey, when you went into that, was the intention with RealSport to grow the business and then sell? Was it as clean cut as that?
I think as a young entrepreneur, started it at 21 years old or whatever I was. I think there are so many motivations for doing it, most to do with ego, validation, and everything wrapped into that.
Yeah, of course.
Right. I got very, very lucky with some people that I met along the way who helped me understand. I didn't know what fundraising was. Right. This is before LinkedIn and all the content is out there. Like, I didn't know what fundraising was. My co-founder's brother at the time had raised some funding. He'd gone to the US and was like, I'm going to go and raise funding, and managed to raise some funding out in the US because we didn't know about anything in the UK. And that was really, really eye-opening for me. And we then managed to meet an angel investor who was a very, very experienced guy, Nigel Ray, who, was one of the first investors into Domino's Pizza, Vice Media, Nutmeg, a really, really experienced angel investor. And it was life-changing. Right, and helped us gear the business in a way that made it very, very acquirable.
So not just ploughed cash in, but it sounds like it actually played an active role in helping shape what you were doing.
Definitely.
Okay, nice.
Definitely. And it was really important. And he put one of his team from the family office on the board, who was fantastic. He's now actually on my board again.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Nigel, after a good exit, double down and is now the lead investor in Connected.
Why would he not?
Exactly. So it's been which is also a really nice full circle one as well. But we did get fortunate with the exit of RealSport because I don't know if you remember back in 2015-16, there were these huge businesses, massive valuations like Lad Bible and Social Chain, and they were all valued on eyeballs. And basically overnight, the market fell out and everyone was like, well, if you're not converting them to subscribers, where's the money? No one cares about ad revenue anymore. Like, where's the subscription revenue, the recurring revenue?
Yeah, of course.
And we were in the same trap. We had 9 million monthly active users. So we had a huge user base, but we were never able to really convert them to subscribers in the way that we wanted them to. But we had this amazing community. And Gfinity, who ended up acquiring us, had come to us and said, we are amazing at doing these deals with the rights holders. They were great at monetizing those relationships with Formula One, Premier League, NBA.
So that was their kind of playbook.
But they knew nothing about distribution and they knew nothing about content. They were all TV guys. And they were great at what they did. The CEO was Gary Cook, the ex-CEO of Manchester City, who acquired us. He'd been on the board of the UFC, so knows sports. New acquisitions as well. So it was great to learn from. But they didn't know anything about online social distribution. So we had what they needed. With us, they had the ability to go to the F1 and say, not only are we going to build you this amazing esports league and the content around it and do that, but we have the social distribution that you want.
So bit of a marriage made in heaven then.
Totally.
And that journey around exiting, how did that feel? So from a you perspective, it sounds like it was a great fit, the acquirer, and at a good time, and you kind of read the market and you'd seen the signs. But it's quite a shift going from calling the shots to working for somebody else. I mean, I didn't enjoy it much myself. I'm curious, how did you handle that?
I don't think either of us are the type for that, really, right?
Unemployable in a really nice way.
Exactly. I had a year lock-in. I handed in my notice a year and 3 days.
Okay.
So you got an extra 3 days out of me.
We have striking similarities, actually, because I handed mine in the day I could.
There you go.
You have more staying power. Right?
Yeah, exactly, clearly. And I think it was just because it was a Friday. I thought we'd be a bit awkward to do it midweek. So yeah, exactly. But I learned a hell of a lot.
Yep.
Because Gfinity had acquired 3 companies at the same time, different cultures. I learned a lot about scaling and what it means to integrate culture and where it's good, where it's bad. They were also PLC. Gfinity, right? So I learned a lot about quarterly results
Yeah.
and the joys and pains of
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
and how antithetical they are to like the long-term building vision of startups. So I learned a hell of a lot. It was a very, very valuable experience. RealSport, when we were acquired, we were 30, 40 people. And I'd never had a job, right?
Yeah.
So to even be in an organization of 1,000 was like, oh wow, like, this is how it works. So I'm very, very grateful for the learning that I had. I think it would have been endlessly more difficult to scale Connected to where it is now
Yep.
without having had that insight, the good and the bad.
Yeah,
So
of course.
you're grateful for every opportunity, right?
And I can deduce from that it was tricky working for somebody else. From my experience, having sold to a larger business, and been promised a certain strategy that changed overnight the moment the deal happened, I lost faith quite quickly. But also, I've worked in a lot of larger businesses before, and I had no desire to be doing that. And for me, that was a real challenge. So how long after that kind of lock-in period did you decompress? Did you chill out for a period before moving on to the next one? What did that look like?
Well, similarly to you, we were promised the world from
Yep.
that acquisition and a clear vision on where we were going, and it didn't happen, right? So after about 3 months, I was working, a handful of hours a week, right? There was just we were not shelved, but the role that I had to play, because I was totally non-operational by the time we sold, right? So I had very little to do.
Yep.
So during that time, there was a bit of decompression and a bit of exploration. So started angel investing. I started to do some board advisory. I did one non-exec role, which actually that company was dissolved. So I learned a lot about the good and bad non-exec at that stage as well. And started doing some fractional too. So I did a fractional CRO role, a fractional CMO role. And at that point, I became obsessed with the future of work being fractional.
Interesting.
And then obviously, a few years later, started to build Connected for that space. So at 26, there was never an idea in my mind of like, oh, well, this is me.
Yep.
This is me done. So it was, I don't think I ever stopped. And I'll be honest as well, there was a lot of ego still wrapped in it for me at the time. And my co-founder, who had left 3 days before me, he left on the day. He didn't wait for the Friday. He started a new business. So I had to start a new business.
Okay, so the pressure was on.
Yeah.
I mean, that self-caused pressure was on.
Self-caused pressure was on.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there was never like a downtime in that way. But yeah, learned a lot, made some angel investments, some good ones, some bad ones. Learned about the long-term game that is angel investment, in that one of the founders I invested in, Claudia, who was running a mental health technology company, that business didn't work out, but she's now my head of ops.
Yeah, I love that.
So you see how it's all about actually getting under the hood, seeing what people are doing, like who's good, who's got great things to bring to the table. So yeah, learned a hell of a lot.
I too, I think all of us who exit a business suddenly think we've been gifted a certificate for investing, and that we must know what we're doing. And I can't tell you how much that is not my calling. And I think that's because I'm an operator. I want to get in and do. And I find it really hard to be 15 steps removed. I had the same challenge with being a non-exec. And that's why I've done it once, and probably will wait 10 years to return to that, in the vain hope that I'm a little calmer. But it's almost a rite of passage, I think. You exit a business, you've got some money, you think, I must know what I'm doing with investing. It transpired I didn't, and I stopped that approach relatively quickly. So I want to talk a little bit about the emotional impact of selling the business. And, for me personally, I found that process of selling the business, working for somebody else, really hard work. And I would say my mental health was probably one of the worst points of my life, going through that earnout. And it was also it was the first time that I went off and sort of explored alternative approaches to mental health. And we talked a bit about this before, but I went off and did a psychedelic retreat. And for me, that reset and that connection was very powerful. Are you comfortable sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a big part of my journey on that side. Out of interest, before we dive into my journey with it, was it the fact that your mental health wasn't where you wanted it to be that you were like, right, let me start exploring what else is out there? Or like, how did you actually reach it?
So I would say going back to 18, I would say at 18, my mental health was challenging for a couple of years. And I probably, well, more than probably, I self-medicated in varying ways. So 12 years sober tells its own story about what I chose to help medicate. But I think as I put down those tools over a period of time, I found the stress from selling that business, from the commitments that were made, the strategy that I'd bought into, and then the change of that overnight, it really pissed me off. But and I will take a lot personally, but for me, it affected me more that my team who were working in this company, that did my head in. And I think as I went through that earnout period, I saw more and more of me kind of eroding. So I came out of that process and I thought, well, I went to India for 20 days and did a bit of an adventure. But I really thought I want to have a look at, can I do a reset? I've been an advocate of, therapy, psychotherapy and whole host of mental health interventions for years. But that was the first time. I mean, I'd taken plenty recreationally in my 20s, but on an inward journey was the first time I'd looked at it in that way. And I think at that point I was like, I need something that is going to give me a reset. So let's go a little more drastic.
Yeah. Wow, amazing. And obviously it's been a revelation, right?
And continues to be.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think a lot of entrepreneurs have a similar story around the... It's funny, I think it's all tied together in many ways. I think a lot of people are driven to entrepreneurialism because of some lack at some point in early life. Is my gut. It could be as simple as a lack of fitting in at school because your mind thinks differently. It could be a deeper one that goes to something parental, and something from early childhood. And I think a lot of these things mix together to say, right, I'm going to build an identity around achievement, around validation, either to prove the teacher's wrong or to get attention from the parents that I never got. Like all of these things tend to be wrapped together for a lot of people. So I don't think it's surprising when the not attending to the reality of those things through building an identity in entrepreneurship leads to self-medication in some form. Because that's going to solve it. Well, actually, it doesn't, right? And that's why I think the self-medication comes in. So I think a lot of people are there. And I think that's where you see a lot of the emotional impact that founders feel post-exit. Because the culmination of that, the ultimate feeling of adequacy that should come from that moment doesn't, right? Because the adequacy is a self thing. So overnight, you're left with, okay, the identity now of being the CEO of this company, the founder of this company has gone. I'm now into a corporate structure that I really didn't fucking want to be into, post-exit in that integration. And then I think you're left with everything that was still, always there. So I think it's a route that we all don't have to go down, but I think it's a route that a lot of us have gone down. And I think that's also where burnout comes in. Because the burnout is the constant trying to attend to that with the other. And for me, the only way to avoid burnout is actually taking a fucking break from myself and from all those things, right?
I love that description. And I used almost identical language yesterday. I have to do an intervention with me and yank me out of me because by definition, It's, you know, it's repeated patterns. I'm better at it now,
Mm-hmm.
but I will absolutely still go down that path. That's so almost extracting me out. It's like that bloody grabber machine in an arcade. I'm like, right, that's it, fucking time, let's go.
It's that, and it's perspective, right?
Yeah.
It's the 1,000-mile view.
Yeah, love that.
On where we are.
I
And
might need you as my therapist, actually, mate.
do you know what? It's and I think therapy is such an important part of that as
I
well.
agree.
Right? Because actually, when I was doing the self-medication without the therapy,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I was getting to where I wanted to be. When you have that first experience where you're doing it alongside the therapy, then you're okay. Now this is really how we start getting better. You know, which I think is great. So I'm a big advocate, proponent. I think the world is waking up to it in a big way. I think people who were self-medicating have been like, "Oh, finally!" You know, I knew I was onto something early on. Not
I
the
was
alcohol.
always on the right path.
Exactly. Yeah. Just didn't necessarily look like it. So yeah, I think that's where, and I hope that's where the world gets to. And I think more passionate people who are responsibly exploring it, looking at the data around it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you know, if we're living in a world which just say, well, it's all about proof and scientific evidence, it's there.
Oh, it absolutely stacks of it. And I do think, you know, for me, everybody should go and experience, you know, a journey and do some inward work. You know, I'm not talking about taking a load of shrooms and jumping on a fucking speaker at ministry. Right. You know, that was my 20s, but I think that way of, you know, of doing it and doing it properly and the integration and asking yourself some really searching questions in a safe environment where you can actually explore it. It's so powerful.
Yeah, totally. And a lot of people I speak to say, I don't like the idea of letting go.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point, right? Therein lies the challenge, letting go.
Yeah.
The same resistance to exploring that opportunity is the exact resistance to where you need to get to in life. It's not letting go, because there is no such thing as control.
Yeah.
Right? And
but that illusion,
it
lives deep in plenty of us, I suspect.
Yeah, totally.
And you'd shared before we started talking that you are off to do a retreat in the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, in about a month's time.
Excellent. Yeah. And whereabouts is that happening?
So Ibiza, which is the home of spirituality, as we know.
It always for me in my 20s as well.
Exactly. But you know, it's an island of two cities, if that makes any sense. But you know what I mean. An island of two sides. Like there's obviously the party side, and there is like a really beautiful spiritual and healing community there. Which is great, and it's been really, really fun to get to know lots of people there and explore that a bit more. And I did a journey there last July, it's about 10 months ago now. And back to what we were saying just before we started, is I think it really makes you lean into purpose more within what you're building.
Yeah, of course.
And for Connected as a company, it's been amazing for momentum, actually aligning to that purpose. It's almost like you know, like if you're trying to garden with a kinked hosepipe.
Yep.
Doesn't matter how much you put on the tap.
Yeah.
Right, the kink in the hosepipe is the blocker.
Through. Yep.
And that's misalignment, right? Versus the aligned one where you get that great flow. And I think leading into purpose is what actually allows for that alignment. So for me personally, and for what it's meant for the company, it's been a beautiful and very positive thing.
I love that. And talk to us a bit about Connected. So Connected has been running for how many years now?
So we launched in January 2022.
Okay.
So four and a bit years now.
4 and a bit. And 16 million annual recurring rev? 17
now, yeah.
Wow.
17
I love
now.
That, mate.
Yeah, thank you. I feel very grateful, because when I became obsessed with fractional working in that way, there was no way we could have known the societal and technological shifts that have occurred that have really created the perfect conditions for fractional to thrive. You know, initially, because I think as an individual, the appeal for working fractionally has been around for a long time.
Yep.
Right, this is not something new.
Agreed.
And that's why people ask me, like, oh, this isn't just consulting. I think the missing piece was the viability of this method for the companies.
Of course.
And I think that viability has only really existed post-COVID. Because geographic sensitivity, now I don't care where you are.
Yeah.
Right? Technological shift of Zoom as standard. Now, like, you joining from isn't a weird thing. And no, that's just table stakes, right?
Yep.
So all of these things have conspired to make that possible. And now, obviously, an even bigger shift of AI and automation, creating further questions about what is the future of work, what is full-time employment, does traditional employment mean safety?
Yep.
Probably not. Do I need to think in a more diversified way about what I do and how I have value and give value. So all of those things have really, coalesced to be an amazing tailwind for us to really drive the future of work in this way. So we're very, very grateful and just leaning into that now to try and help as many people as possible in this transition.
It's, for me, 25 years as an interim, as a contractor. So I've always bought into that concept. I wouldn't have been working fractionally at that time, but that concept of, working as hard for a business, whether you're permanent or not, has been ingrained in me since I was 19. But I think the way the market is changing, and as you say, COVID, and, if I think even about the team at the Grafter at the minute, we have one of the team who lives in Seattle, and he's a fractional resource between us and Exiteers, one of our partner companies. And we have got we've got other members of the team who are based in varying different locations. And you're absolutely right, that would not have been viable. And even, we're pitching a client next week, and our partners are based in Detroit, and I said they are going to need to dial in, they're not flying over. All of it these days is just much more acceptable. The world is a lot smaller in that way, but it is impressive to see what you're doing, how you're doing it, and the speed at which it is gathering momentum. I'm blown away. We were last talking probably at that event in Helsinki, am I right? Is that the last time I saw you?
No, I saw you at Ideas Fest.
Ideas Fest, briefly. Okay, yes.
So that was last summer,
I
guess. Yeah, but I hadn't seen you for ages before that.
Yeah. And that was where you'd sort of signed off the strategic partnership with Simon Squibb, and you were doing some.
That was right in the lead up, because we launched that in September, October.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Incredible.
So right in the lead up to that. Yeah, which has been great. And you know what? If there's ever a role model for leading with purpose, like it's Simon on that side. So for us, it's been amazing. I think we're really aligned on, because he's now on my advisory board, and I'm advising Help Bank as well. We both believe we're building the future of entrepreneurialism and work, but just two sides of the same coin. For him, for helping people start their businesses, and for us, helping people launch that fractional, more entrepreneurial career. So I think it's no longer a controversial thing to say, like, that's where the world is heading.
Of course.
And it's been great to learn from him and see how he builds. He's a force of nature. So, yeah, it's been really cool to watch that.
It's funny because one of my team ran into Simon at an event and said, he is exactly what you'd expect when he's off camera as well, and that really is the testament, isn't it, to who people really are.
Yeah, so, totally. It's also something which Simon talked about a little bit, but I wish he actually spoke about it more. Which is, he's never drunk alcohol in his life.
Oh, I didn't know
he's
that.
He's never had a drop of alcohol in his life, and now someone who hasn't had a drink for 120 days nearly. The feeling that you have, like that energy that you have.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable, right? But actually, it's just how we're supposed to be as humans.
It's true.
Right? That energy is supposed to be table stakes. And I always find it so interesting that he has that energy of someone who's like never had a drink. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I think there's a lot to be said for how much more can be achieved when you have that well that fills itself so much more quickly. At least for me, right? At least for me.
Well, you're preaching to the converted. Yeah. I mean, I can't bear a bad night's sleep, so I don't know how I'd cope with a hangover these days.
Right.
It'd be a real shock. And what does the future hold? What's the plan? Where we've connected with you. What's
So we're servicing about 10,000 fractionals at the moment. The dream is to help 100,000 people go and do that. And I think we have a great opportunity to go and drive to that. We want to partner with anyone in the space. Like, we want to be as mission driven as possible to try and make this a bit more, to get more buoyancy within what we're doing. We've made ourselves free for companies to hire and recruit in this way, to get better outcomes for the individuals we're servicing on that side. So yeah, we're just going to continue with that mission. I think when you're an early stage startup, it's about throwing 100 different bets to see what
and
lands.
praying something's going to land.
And praying something. And we had that, we had that early on, as every startup does. Now it's just more about like doing less and hyper focusing on how do we help 100,000 people. Because so to dive a bit more into how Connected helps people in that way, is like it's not just a marketplace. When we started off, we could see very clearly there were a few things that individuals would need to be successful making this transition. Because a lot of people, and one of them is sort of training and upskilling, because a lot of people have spent 20 years in the corporate and they become institutionalized. They don't know their own value and their power outside of that framework. Something I hear all the time is, I've done 20 years at PwC. How the hell do I now go with a 10-person startup? How do I go and sell my services when I don't have brand PwC behind me? So we focus a lot on that upskilling and training.
Nice.
The second thing we give them is all the tools they need. So there's like again, when they're leaving their corporate career, they lose that whole tech stack, right? So building in the invoicing, the billing, the scheduling, everything they need to actually manage that. And then also giving them the opportunities as well. So we have 4,500 organizations on the platform currently using it to find fractional talent in that way and advisory talent in that way. But something that we've really lent into is saying to these individuals, you need to have a bit of a sandbox. You need to build a bit of social proof, a bit of credibility. So go and do a pro bono placement with one of these startups for 3 to 6 months.
Such a good idea.
As a safe environment.
Yeah.
A lot of imposter syndrome comes in. I can't charge from. I've never done this before. I can't. Cool. Go and do this. Give half a day a month, whatever it might be,
and
whatever
build
you
up
can,
the experience.
and build up that experience. Really flex that muscle and get that testimonial. Get that case study, because that's going to make everything else. So
it's funny, isn't it? Because it's so ingrained for us. But then it would be as entrepreneurs, because you do the work, you start case studying pretty much before you've even started. And
exactly.
it just that kind of sushi conveyor belt is part of it. But for people who have always been elsewhere, interesting. I'd not thought about that.
So it's a big part of what we do. So for us, if you get that testimonial and you learn how to present yourself and showcase yourself, which we help them do on the platform, we're giving them the tools to fish, right? So for me, it's about how do we get 100,000 people those tools, everything they need to go and work for themselves, and hopefully actually live in more alignment themselves.
Nice. I love that.
So that's really the hyper focus.
And what about you then, Roy? So you are back in the UK at the minute, but you've been in Mexico City for a period. Where's home at the minute, or is that a fluid concept?
It's definitely a fluid concept. I mean, home for me is with my partner.
Of course.
So I take her with me as much as I can to all these places. But we now have offices in Mexico City, London, Manchester, Krakow, Mumbai, and a small office in Miami as well.
Nice.
So we're a little bit all over. I spent the first 3 months of the year in Mexico City. You been out there before?
No, but
really
I'm
cool place
waiting for an invite, and I'm immediately available.
Nice, okay. it's a really, really cool place to be. Lots of talent, lots of people who are ambitious and want to see Mexico City do well. So we're really, really proud to have a team of 20 down there now. It's great. It's great to be there. But I'm spending more and more time with the product and technology team. As you know, not a day goes by without insane innovation just coming down the pipeline. So for me to stay as close as I can to how we're leveraging those technologies to get better outcomes so I'm spending a bit more time UK, Poland at the moment.
Well, handy that you're coming to UK and Poland when the weather has started to improve over here.
It was times.
I was going to say,
come on.
It feels very orchestrated. I like that, mate.
I managed to miss the winter and came back for the right time. Totally,
very sensible.
I feel like you do the same in Spain.
Well, to be fair, that's exactly what I did. So we had 4 months in Spain at the back end of last year, and I would rather not be in a colder climate for any period of time. So I think it's a bit of a balancing act around where can you be. The bit that I realised being in Spain was I had to be back every 10 days, and then I thought actually I'm probably putting more pressure on their business doing that. So in the end, it made sense for me to be back for 12 months.
Fine.
And we'll kind of work out what that looks like in 12 months' time. But I'm sure I've got time in my diary for Mexico City. So
nice,
you keep me posted on your movements there.
All right, love it. When I start heading back out there, I'll let you know. But it's stressful doing that. A lot of even small, short haul travel. Because I was doing for a year between London and Amsterdam about 2.5 years ago. And that year, that flight every 4 days, it really just, it takes a toll.
I had no idea the 2.5 hour flight was even going to have any impact, to be fair.
Yeah.
But of course, it's not just the 2.5 hour flight. You've got the bloody transfer time, and then you're taking 6-7 hours out of the day, and all the work is still queued up. But I also felt that I was probably running 12, 14, 15 hour days when I came back, and I was like, this is just not good.
It doesn't end well. That doesn't end well on too long.
It probably didn't, albeit it was good fun.
Nice.
Final question is, what's the plan with Connected? So you're growing the business, it's going kind of great guns. What's the long-term ambition?
Well, because of the nature of fractional working, there are lots of dynamics that really lend themselves to a lot of scale. Because of the geographic sensitivity, we don't really have much of a cold start problem. So when we launched in Philadelphia at the start of this year, the first person who joined in Philadelphia, their demand is supplied by companies or people that we have in New York, Dallas, London, Dubai. Like, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter because of the cross-functional and cross-border nature of it. So with that in mind, it's really easy for us to spin up in new places because we don't have the cold start. We don't have any physical infrastructure. We had driven to 5 million ARR in the US before we even put a boot on the ground there.
I love that.
So there's lots of scalability. So I'm really excited by the UAE and Hong Kong and Singapore. Again, places where people are very international in the way they think. Lots of them are actually doing contractual work in different places. So I think we'll launch there in the next sort of 6-12 months. US, I love the US. The raw entrepreneurial spirit. And I know you love that there,
preaching.
Right? Yeah, the raw entrepreneurial spirit, like the speed at which things happen. Well, have you been over to Dubai?
Yes, a couple of times. Obviously, avoiding it at the minute.
Sure. Yes.
But for me, I probably I favour the US over Dubai. Mainly, it's the concentration of the energy and the can-do attitude. And that for me blew my mind. I was like, fuck, I found my people.
In the US.
It kind of freaked me out.
Yeah. So I'm totally with you on that. And with RealSport, my last company, 50% of our user base was in the US. So it's something which has been a big part for me in my whole journey. First place I've ever seen that energy outside of the US was Dubai.
Interesting.
So I spent 8 weeks there last year, and I was skeptical. I'll be honest, I was skeptical about Dubai. And because I was been there in 2018, and it wasn't that. And I spent 8, and I was like, oh, okay, I see why people are here, because it's the same speed of things happening, similar like frontier mindset. A lot of the people who've moved out there is because they're very entrepreneurial, like they want to make things happen.
Make it happen.
Yeah, so I'm excited to be there, really excited to be there. And yeah, so I think for us, it's how quickly can we help 100,000 people get to that? And whatever the right route is to help us reach that number in as short as time as possible is what we're actively following.
I love that, mate. Listen, I really appreciate you taking the time, and really, really good to catch up, and wish you well with everything you're doing. For anybody who's listening, where can they track you down, mate?
So LinkedIn and Instagram, Roei Samuel or Roei Sam on Instagram, and if anyone ever wants to talk fractional, I'm here with them.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Rach, thank you.
A pleasure. Before you go, if you like what you're listening to on the Exiteers podcast, like, review and subscribe. Is that right? Okay, perfect. Cheers.